Hey guys, how you doing? Hey, I'm back, and I wanted to make a video and talk a little bit about a place I've been to a couple of times actually. It's a city in the Philippines, and it seems to be quite popular with expats. Kind of a retiree destination in the Philippines, and of course the city is called Dumaguete. It's on uh, it's on the island of Oriental, Negros Oriental. And it's actually the southern half kind of another island that's, uh, with Bacolod and then Iloilo's Panay, actually right next to Bacolod, right across the water from Bacolod. Um, it's Oriental. The Dumaguete section is Oriental, the bottom half of the island, and it's Occidental, the northern half, which is Bacolod. But I'm just going to talk about Dumaguete on this video, like the pluses and minuses, okay, of Dumaguete. Um, and some of there might be a few pluses and minuses that are the same. You know what I mean? There are some that could be perceived as pluses and minuses, depending on how you look at it. Um, but I'll just talk about the pluses first, right? Um, it's it's a nice area as far as it's a small city, by the way. Dumaguete is only like 100,000 population, which especially in the Philippines, that's pretty small, I know in the U.S. that would be kind of like, oh, I mean, there's a couple of, if you put like two populated suburbs of Chicago together, you would get about 100,000, but that's Chicago. I know you guys are from all over the U.S. and other parts of the world, maybe from small rural areas, maybe from small cities, similar to Dumaguete. But it is a small city, and the climate is kind of a little nicer. It's a little cooler, especially if you go just north of Dumaguete to Valencia, which is a little bit of a mountainous area. You're going up in elevation as you go up to Valencia, and so it's a lot cooler up there. You know what I mean? Um, and it's nice. It's more provincial. There's a lot more nature in Dumaguete. To see. A lot of different, there's parks and waterfalls and just some pretty exciting things to do, if you're into the natural settings and like hiking, and if you like water, natural water and stuff like that. You don't like crowds, right? You just like to be more in an outside natural setting. Then definitely Dumaguete is a definite place to consider, that you should consider. And Valencia, like I said, which is just north of it. Um, but it's a small city. Like I said, it has a lot of nice places to visit, natural resources and stuff to see. And it does have shopping, right? Like in the city of Dumaguete, especially, there's a mall, there's a Robinson's Mall, so there is some restaurants in there. There's some shopping, grocery store, okay. There's also markets like, open markets, wet markets they call them, and I believe on the weekends there's like a big, almost like a farmers market, which we would call like a farmers market. I think it's on every Sunday, I believe, and where people uh, cook foods and stuff, and it's like little vendors, like uh, and stuff like that. It's kind of nice. They sell fruit, and it might be from their own property. You know what I mean? People have property with all kinds of fruit trees on there and stuff, and a lot of these people sell their stuff at the market on Sundays. Some people actually cook, and they actually have little. It's almost like a little, little vendors, and you know, like street food, but maybe a little better. um, so that's cool, right? I mean, it's got a lot of, a lot of that. Um, there is some medical, infrastructure in Dumaguete. I believe there's like 3 hospitals, right? 2 or 3 hospitals. Um, and I'll for now I'll say that that's a plus. You know what I mean? And then I'll talk about a little bit later about some alternative areas, that have more, to choose from as far as medical. But that it's, yeah. I mean, is there traffic in Dumaguete? Yeah, but you know what, man? It's not much compared to like Manila. Okay, I live in Manila, from Chicago. I've seen traffic, man. You know what I mean? Like Dumaguete. Anybody who cries about traffic in Dumaguete, you must be from a small town or something, or you're in the U.S. or you know what I mean? Yeah, there's traffic. Yeah, is just like you could say the same thing about Tagbilaran and Bohol, right? Which is the only city in Bohol. It's like really small city. Yeah, is there a little bit of traffic? Yeah, it might slow you down maybe 5-10 minutes if you're going from the southern part of Bohol to the northern part, you know. And that's sort of like, I mean, yeah, Dumaguete's a little bit more than that maybe, but it's just not that bad. With traffic. I mean, it's like I said, compared to what? Compared to Cebu City, it's nothing. Compared to Manila, it's nothing. Compared to even like other, I don't know, probably even Bacolod and other bigger cities like that in Iloilo have, times of the day where the traffic's going to be a lot worse than it would be in Dumaguete. But like I said, it's got enough stuff, right, where you can live. You can live there. A lot of retirees like it. Because it's small, because of all the reasons that I've already stated. They don't want to be in a big city. Okay, they'd rather be in a smaller city with like nice things to do, outside, and not so many people. Whenever they go out, there's not like a million people, on the streets and sidewalks. So that is obviously some pluses. And the weather, that's a kind of a big thing. Um, Now, this is something that I'm going to mention in the plus, but I'm definitely going to mention in the negative too. uh, there's no, like, they don't really have taxi cabs, like regular taxis in Dumaguete. And I'm pretty sure they still don't have grabs. You know what I mean? Unless that's recently changed, you know. Um, but so that could be a plus, because it's okay, less vehicles on the road, less traffic. But when you first go to Duma, and you don't have a car yet, or if you're just there visiting, you don't have a car yet. Well, instead of being able to take a grab or a taxi, yeah, you're gonna have to take a trike. They got plenty of trikes. And from what I remember too, I spent about 9 or 10 days in Dumaguete on 2 trips, and the trikes were a little bigger, a little more comfortable than some trikes elsewhere in the Philippines. Sometimes they could be kind of small, especially in bigger cities. Sometimes the trikes are actually smaller because the driver needs to be able to see above the passenger compartment, because there's so much traffic, like in Manila, there's so many cars. When you're in parts of Manila, like where I'm at, kind of a little, almost like outside Manila a little bit, and there are trikes in some of the streets, not really on most of the main streets, but some of the other smaller streets. I think they're uh, smaller for a reason, you know what I mean? So they can literally see above them, so that when they change lanes and that, they're less likely to get into an accident. Just my little take on it. Did some thinking about this. I've noticed it, and I've noticed in other parts, like in Duma, the baskets were a little bigger. The passenger compartments of trikes tend to be a little bit bigger. Plus, there's a lot of Americans and a lot of Westerners in Dumaguete. You know what I mean? There's sort of a concentration of Westerners in Dumaguete. Okay, so they probably said, "Hey, man, we need to have bigger passenger compartments because they're not fitting in these little, Philippine size, trike passenger compartments. Um, and that's another thing, right? Okay, now this could be a plus or a minus. I'm going to put it in the plus on this section. But yeah, the pluses are that there are a lot of Westerners. foreigners in Dumaguete. You know, I mean, compared to like the overall population. I mean, God, I don't know. It might be, I don't know. It's got to be. It could be 20%. You know, of the whole entire sort of population. You know, of Dumaguete, or if you include Valencia too, right? It could very well be 20%. You know, of West that they're Westerners. Okay, 20% of the whole population. You know, it's at least 10%. I'm almost certain on that. I mean, it'd be like it's got to be minimum 10%. Um, so so I mean, you go there if you're going there to live, for example, you're gonna meet Westerners. You know, easily. You know, you might be able to you'll probably be able to make some friends. You know, um, even initially, even on a short, like a 3 week visit or something. If you're just going there just to Dumaguete only for 3 weeks, then yeah, you'll definitely be able to meet some foreigners. You know, just be careful. You know what I mean? Don't beware. There's always going to be a bad apple. You know what I mean, in the bunch, right? So don't just assume that, oh yeah, he's a Westerner, I'm gonna be his friend, or whatever, his or her whatever friend. Always be careful, when you're dealing with people in the Philippines, whether especially other foreigners, try to feel them out a little bit, before you just kind of uh, jump into their world, or let them into your world. I'll say that. So, but now aside from all this, right? I can't think of. I mean, I think I've covered a lot of the major things, a lot of the major pluses. Um, and then as far as like minuses, like I said, some of the minuses are the same. Are going to be the same. Like no taxes or no taxis or grabs. Okay, some guys would consider that a minus. And there's definitely not as good a medical infrastructure as there is in other bigger cities. And almost all the other bigger cities, like have better medical infrastructure. Bacolod, Iloilo, Cebu City, obviously Manila's the best medical infrastructure that you're going to get in the Philippines, you know, without a doubt. Okay, and it's not just St. Luke's. Okay, whenever you talk about Manila medical, good medical, everyone's like, oh yeah, St. Luke's, hospital or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure that's a good hospital. I've never been there, but I'm positive it's a good hospital. But there's others. You know what I mean? And they're like the one that I've been going to recently, and I'll probably do after I'm concluded with all this crap that I'm doing now. Uh, which is really moving along good, and things are are going well for me, by the way, medically and everything. But I'll do sort of maybe when I'm done with everything, I'll do a video about it. But I'm actually impressed with where I'm going here in Novaliches, Quezon City. But anyway, yeah, I would say the like I said, the lack of medical infrastructure. And while I'm on the subject, let's just talk about infrastructure, right? Internet, electric, not so good in Dumaguete. I mean, they have a lot of brownouts. They have sometimes, they have scheduled brownouts where they're like constantly trying to maybe upgrade the electrical, and they have to literally be down for like 8 hours. Like it's usually on the weekend a lot of times, I think, from what I've noticed. Um, Maybe not always. Maybe they do them during the week, but I mean, I think they try to sort of do them more on the weekends. Um, and they'll go down. They'll have no. You'll have no electric for the whole day for like 8 hours or whatever. And then there's the usual, like which happens because of storms and stuff like that. There'll be sort of unscheduled brownouts, or just electrical problems, and internet also. Okay, so your infrastructure is not going to be great, in Dumaguete, especially compared to these other bigger cities that I've already mentioned. But do other areas of the Philippines have brownouts and internet outages? Of course they do. but not as much. You know what I mean? Not nearly as much, I think, as Dumaguete. I think sometimes I think Dumaguete's infrastructure is just it's one step behind the population. Okay, I think that's probably the problem. Um, so we'll see. Hopefully that will level out. You know, hopefully they'll upgrade to the point where you know when they get those things fixed, you know, like the electric and the internet and all that being more reliable or as reliable as some of the bigger cities in the Philippines, when they get to that point, man, they will have a. I would predict that they would have a lot larger influx of people wanting to live there, foreigners wanting to live there, and you know maybe even Filipinos too, right? You know, if you're a Filipino and you grew up in Manila and you worked in Manila all your life, you might want to go somewhere to retire. You know, when you're, you know what I mean, in your 50s or 60s within the Philippines. You know, so I mean, yeah, that would be a definite plus if they can approve that. Um, and then, and then the other negatives are like, I mean, like I said, there's one mall, okay, and it's a Robinson's mall. You know, it's not some huge mall like you find in Manila and Cebu, you know, Bacolod, and you know what I mean, Iloilo. You know, it's just a regular size mall. So you don't have the food choices, okay, that you would have in other cities in Dumaguete. You're not going to have the same amount of food choices and restaurant choices and stuff like that, especially like Western food. I mean, the only Western food you're gonna get is like McDonald's and maybe Jollibee's a little bit Westerny, right? It's kind of like Popeyes. It's good. They got the spicy fried chicken and all that, except for the well, Popeyes has rice too, actually, rice and beans and stuff like that because it's Louisiana-based, company where they have that kind of food is prevalent. But so that's a negative. That's another negative, right? Just not the food choices. So whenever you watch vloggers that are living in Dumaguete and have lived there for several years, they always complain about the food, and that's probably one of the reasons. There's just not a huge selection. Like outside of the mall and outside of a few other restaurants that are outside the mall, there's just not as much. You know what I mean? As you would get elsewhere. Uh, and some of the I don't know what other negatives there are. I mean, like I said, you could put some of these, like being a small city. Maybe some guys like the medical, okay, obviously, which I already mentioned. But I mean, that could be a big negative. If you have some issues here and you want to be able to sort of see a doctor, a good doctor regularly, and all that, and not have to worry about waiting for a long time or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. You might want to think twice. you know. Unless you don't mind, if you've got enough money and maybe you don't mind, like, oh, I'll every 3 months I'll fly to Manila for a couple days and use their medical. You know what I mean. If you're in that position, if you can do that, God bless you. And if you can do that, great. Then it'll work out. What is it? A 1 hour flight to Manila? I mean, it's not. You can go anywhere from one Philippine city to another. It's never gonna be more than about an hour and a half flight, right? Maybe 2 hours if you went from like from Clark to like General Santos, which is like the southern tip of Mindanao. What is that? 2 hours? I don't know, but it's close, right? It can't be much more than that. It's an island nation, and it's really not huge area. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing. You could fly to another city mostly in an hour. Pretty much. You know what I mean? So that's kind of cool. About it. Just the overall Philippines in general. Positive. Um, that's about all I can think of, right? Like I said, and the foreigner thing. Some guys might think, hey, I don't need to be surrounded by foreigners. Like you know what I mean? Like okay, I don't mind having a couple of foreigners, friends in my area or something, but I don't want to be like every time I go out, I see like 20 foreigners, or something. You know what I mean? And there's some guys like that think like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, I mean, because otherwise, obviously the mentality can be, hey, I could, if I wanted to be surrounded by foreigners, I would have stayed in the U.S. or whatever, wherever country you're from, you know. So anyway, guys, that's about it. I'm gonna I'm gonna wrap up here. If any of you guys want to comment, if I missed something, either pros or cons, let me know. Because I probably did miss something, right? It's possible. So, but that's about it, guys. I'm gonna do another video about the pros and cons of Manila, which is where I live. Um, I could do some other islands too if you want. Like even like Cebu or Bohol, places I've been, Bacolod. But sometimes they're going to be similar. You know what I mean? There's going to be some similarities in the pluses and negatives. Um, but for now, I'll stick with. I'll at least do one more about Manila. And then we'll see. We'll go from there. So, all right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a great day. Hey guys, you know what? I'm just gonna link this video with the last one. It's gonna be a real short one. I forgot one thing, man. It's kind of important too. The cost of living is very low in Dumaguete. I mean, even in comparison with the bigger cities, of course, in the Philippines, like Manila, for example. So yeah, the cost of living is definitely lower in Dumaguete. That's a major plus. The rents especially, right? I mean, you could rent a place. Listen, it wasn't a couple of years ago. I can say, hey, you could rent a house for 200 a month. Because I knew people that were, and it's a small house, right? Like a 1 or 2 bedroom house, just a small house with a yard. But now I would say, listen, 300 a month, you can rent an apartment easily, okay, possibly a house, a small house, you know, and if you get higher, yeah, you can for 500 or 600 a month easily could rent a house, like a nice, decent sized house, okay, for 500 or 600 a month, okay. But like I said, if you're by yourself and you don't mind just living in an apartment, like a 1 bedroom or even a studio, you can find that for like 200-300 a month in Dumaguete, or Valencia, so that's just one thing that I forgot. I wanted to add that because that is kind of a major plus. But that's about it, guys. I'm just going to link this to the other. I'm going to put them together, with the other video. All right, guys. Thanks.